Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan, and today is Festivus, which means the day that you are listening to this is Christmas Eve, which means that I am drinking whiskey. How you doing, Cranky Fan?
By the time you are listening to this, I will be back down in sunny Florida again because I can't take this cold. This has been a brutal few days of freezing coldness, and I'm not a big fan of Florida at Christmas time, but I can't take the cold anymore. So
It's pretty cold up here. Yeah.
yes, yeah, very bad.
Ice cold as the New York Giants, who just fell 34-7 to the Atlanta Falcons, starting a rookie quarterback. Although I guess that doesn't really mean anything since he was drafted inside the top 10, I think.
Number 9.
Yeah. And the Giants were starting Drew Lock, who stinks. 2 pick sixes in this game for Drew Lock.
Yeah.
There you go. There's a stat. So that means 3 touchdown passes for him in this game.
I have a very simple synopsis of my opinion on this game. 1, I didn't watch it. You see pictures of Mara up in the box, and he has those aggravated looks and everything. There's a difference between Mara and myself. Well, 2 differences. 1, he is a multi-millionaire, and I am not.
I was going to say the paycheck, yeah, right.
Yes, he makes a lot more than I do, but he has to watch these games. He's the owner. He's an employee. He is invested more than we can ever be emotionally in it. He has to watch. I don't. I'm just a fan. Grump, you brought this up several times, that there's another alternative to, being miserable every week watching a team that's clearly on the tank. Don't watch. And you know something? This is Christmas time, my favorite month of the year. And, I was with Grump last weekend with family stuff, had other family stuff this weekend, had a great time with my cousin looking at his baseball cards. I don't need to be brought down with aggravation with a team that I know is in the tank. They are not aligned. Winning is not their priority anymore. Their priority is getting through this season and putting themselves in the best position for the future. So, just didn't watch. And that's fine. I know we do this show. I should have opinions about the game, but it doesn't matter. My second point, nothing has changed for me. My opinion of Dable, my opinion of Joe Shane, my opinion of Mara, my opinion of the players. The second, I'll say this again and again and again till the season is over. The second they took Daniel Jones off the starting 11 and then ultimately released him, they were winning became secondary to the future. And it doesn't matter anymore. Don't show me stats how they're going to lose 10 in a row. Don't show me stats that they're winless at home. I don't care. Don't show me stats that, this is the worst offense since, Christ was born. It doesn't matter. They're just playing out the string. So nothing's changed for me. Nothing has changed. My opinion, now we should get rid of Dable. Now the price of tea in China is high. Doesn't matter. We're just getting through this. And so I have no opinion about the game because don't care. Moving on.
Yeah, so I guess one of the positives of this game, I mean, this game turned out to be brutal. Like I said, 2 pick sixes by Drew Lock. It was not a good game. It wasn't a close game. But I'll also say, despite the score, like, this wasn't immediately a blowout. Like, you'd have thought that, like, Atlanta just marched up and down the field in this game. It's not really true. I mean, I was a little fearful in the opening quarter and a half that this might actually be a closer game than I expected. Part of it being the Giants. The Giants on offense looked like they were sort of doing some things early on. I mean, ultimately the pick 6 really set them back, but their first march down the field and the touchdown pass to Tyrone Tracy, there was Drew Lock like escaping the pocket and keeping the play alive, going laterally. Tyrone Tracy in the back of the end zone wide open, gets a toe tap in there. Was a really good play that was indicative of a team that isn't absolute total garbage. And I started to get a little bit worried because, the Falcons started doing some silly shit that like Kyle Pitts fumbling kind of sort of an interception into Cordell Flott's hands in the red zone. Like, it's like, oh my God. Like, don't tell me that this game is going to be close for stupid reasons.
Don't
But it
don't
quickly.
shorten the game and then we all of a sudden win.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I think like immediately following that, I'm pretty sure like Drew Lock got sacked. Like, and it was just a absolute disaster from then on. And that's fine. But, you know, I think it's interesting because, you know, Tyrone Tracy again continues to look good. I thought Drew Phillips came back and he still looks very good. And in this game, Malik Neighbors surpassed the franchise rookie record for receptions. And I think it's a little interesting because Malik Neighbors is the shining star of hope for this organization. And I think that's what the unretiring of number one was supposed to signify. You know, again, I don't know what happens behind closed doors. I don't know if he demanded that. I don't know if the organization offered it to him or somewhere in between. But I do think that the optics of it were presented to us, the fans, sort of in that light. Would you agree?
My feeling from day one of that was that I think he made, if not a demand, he asked and asked and asked and asked.
You're basing that entirely on speculation, right?
Of course I am, because I don't think I think the Giants, the one thing they are very, very proud of are their heritage and their history, and this team, everything's place in history of this team. And then it just seems very out of character for, you know, for the Mariners to say like, hey, you know something, not even the number one overall pick, not some guy that's like transcends football, just a receiver. Hey, this guy comes out every year, and this all of a sudden be like, we're gonna make you the franchise guy, we're gonna make you the marquee guy. I don't think that was something that was proactive on the Giants side. I think that was something that they reacted to and acquiesced to.
Regardless, my point is it was presented to us, the fans, in a way that kind of felt like a ray of hope. If not for the immediate future, but the future.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, even though he's passed a rookie reception record for the franchise, I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm just more excited for what Tyrone Tracy brings to the table. I'm not saying he's going to be a better player, but, breaking this record, this isn't a scoring record. This isn't a yardage record. This is you are the best person available to us to catch the ball, and you've caught it a lot of times because we've thrown it to you a million times. Yeah. And it comes kind of with the asterisk of like, oh yeah, and like some critical drops were in there too. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's sort of the dullest highlight of a season.
Well, I think the thing about him is I don't think he's much of a highlight. I think he's been pretty disappointing this year, to be very honest. And again, a lot of that's not his fault. I mean, look who's throwing to him. Look at the offensive line is protecting, and all the things, associated with it. But, when I saw that he was about to break the record, I was shocked. I was like, he has that many catches? It just does. He doesn't seem to be making as major of an impact as I thought he would be. Again, he's a rookie and all the other things associated with too. But, what stands out for me in this first season are the drops. Honestly, I mean, how many touchdowns has he had this year? Does he have 5?
I think he has 2.
2. I mean, that's, catching, getting a lot of like little 3-yard outs or, little crossing things, where a majority of his catches are. That's wonderful, but the face of the franchise, the guy we invested a very high draft pick with, the guy that we changed history for to unretire a number, need more than 2 touchdowns. You need to be, you need to outkick your coverage, and he has not done that this year. So when you bring up Tyrone Tracy, I'm actually going to go a step further. If I'm giving out the Just Giants awards for Rookie of the Year on this team, I'm actually thinking of voting for him instead. Far less expectations, a far more difficult task to do it, trying to run behind an offensive line that's not very good and with basically no passing game. And he's made something out of nothing far more than Malik Neighbors has. And, he has been definitely the Mount Rushmore of high spots on this team this year.
Podcast edit here. League Neighbors is 4 touchdowns. Tyrone Tracy has 5.
Okay, well, 4 is still, I think,
It's still less than 5, which was kind of your opening,
and still light.
Yeah.
For someone, yeah.
No, and I think that's. I find this conversation about the top 3 highlight, I guess, things of this year, I would say, at least from the rookie class, would be Tracy, then Neighbors, then Drew Phillips. And then if you want to add in off-season additions, I would throw Brian Burns in there, and I would throw Jermaine Illuminor in there as quality additions that I am happy about for the upcoming years going forward.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably a wrap on those. That's probably all of those that I can think of. But nevertheless, I think that's far more interesting than what seems to be the dominating headline today, which is that Brandon Brown was spotted talking to players on the sideline during the game, and then some cockamamie excuse that because there was no booth available for them, that's what they did. I just don't care, and I don't know why I'm supposed to care other than what seems to me as being, speculative. Does this mean something? I don't know. Read my article and find out. No one's interested in a losing team right now, so anything to write an article kind of thing. I just don't care. I feel like I see GMs and people talking to people on the sidelines almost every week.
The sharks are circling. I mean, whether that's the media, a fan base that's had it up to here with this administration and the cumulative effect of multiple administrations, and now they're starting to read tea leaves where there are no tea leaves. I did not know about this until you told me this, before we did show prep, as we're doing show prep. I don't care. It means nothing to me.
Yeah, I just I don't give a shit. I still don't know why it's supposed to be intriguing to me. No one can really give me a concrete answer on that. So
no.
So the Giants are full mission ahead on the tank here, and they get a little bit of D-Day Normandy on their side. The Raiders winning against the Jacksonville Jaguars, a clash of the Titans of Aiden O'Connell and Mac Jones in Vegas. A really tight game.
I was more locked into that game and more vested interest in that than I've had in a Giant game in the last 2 months. That's a sad state of affairs, and obviously not in a position we want to be in. But it was one of those days. I'm happy I have Sunday ticket because I was able to watch that game, and everything is kind of falling into place for us to control our destiny. And I think, Grump, I want to lead this in really quick with a quick discussion about the quarterback situation and what should we do. And I know we've talked about there's different possibilities of what we can do going forward. It's we're gonna have the first or second pick. Do we draft a quarterback now? Do we trade the pick and get assets for next year and and sign a bridge quarterback going forward? I've thought about it both ways, back and forth for a while now, and I've kind of made my decision this weekend that I honestly think we should draft a quarterback now. And here's my reasons why. Right now we are still in the, nobody has done their heavy analysis and their evaluations yet of these quarterbacks. This is kind of shaping up how it is almost every year, where there's 2 quarterbacks who have the headlines and the names coming out of the clubhouse. You get through a season, and then, after the season, there's somebody who comes up out of nowhere, rises up draft boards, individual workouts, have maybe a great bowl game, Senior Bowl, combine, all of that nonsense, and it comes up. There may not be, the Peyton Manning coming out, or, the Andrew Luck coming out. That's the no-brainer. He's the guy. But these are guys, these quarterbacks, 1, 2 are probably going to be in the top 3 picked, regardless of who is drafting. As long as, obviously the teams are drafting are looking for a quarterback. Or so if that team, obviously doesn't need a quarterback, they're going to trade down to somebody who wants a quarterback and get him up there. I just want to be able to control our own destiny and be able to pick our guy, not the leftover of one or the other. Not if we're drafting 9th or 10th to say, well, that's the 5th guy, trying to find a diamond in the rough where the chances are that guy's successful is lower than it is. I think now is the highest probability that we are going to get the guy that most fits what we want to do now. Um, you know, and if the other thing is, if the other thing I've heard is, well, why don't you trade the pick and get, all of these draft picks for it and to move down a couple spots? If somebody wants to move up that badly for one of these quarterbacks and willing to give up this whole haul of draft picks and everything, that tells me that guy might be pretty good, and we may want him for ourselves. So I know that there's going to be a temptation to potentially trade down to and again, I'm predicating this. This is my statement on December 23rd, without going through the process and saying I don't like any of these guys. But right now, my stance would be I would prefer, if we end up with the number 1 pick or even 2, to take that quarterback now. None of these quarterbacks coming out, are horrible. They all have question marks and certain things, but they're all, they look like on the surface could be, decent NFL quarterbacks going forward. And again, I'm not the draft guy. Grump is the guy. He's gonna provide us with so much information in the next couple of months that he'll have a much more informed take than I am. And my take might evolve too over time. But I just think right now I'm going into this thinking, if we end up 1, I think we go quarterback now.
A lot of stuff in there.
A lot of stuff.
So, to sort of summarize your thesis, right, is that the Giants are at the front of the line. They are the first to the dinner. And it's high time that Mike gets to pick prime rib because that's what he wants, god damn it. Not because, the shrimp scampi is already gone and prime rib is all that's left. You get to pick, and everyone else gets to deal with whatever you leave behind. And it's not a bad. I can't disagree with that, right? Like, it's the Giants are now in full control. They have a mathematical, clear lead over the Raiders now. In terms of the draft order, this isn't a strength of schedule jockeying of position anymore. And I do not expect the Giants to win any of the other games. At this point, John Mara has suffered enough. Not in my opinion, but he is not going to feel better about a win if it means he will be re-stressed on draft day. I think at this point, he has already endured enough that he is okay sucking it down for another 2 weeks. Especially since one of those weeks is probably an Eagles game that's not even going to be remotely close, whether they play starters or not. So all things are indicating that they are already at that position, and to walk away from the only time probably that you are going to be the first at the dinner table seems very, very silly. And I get that logic. And I understand where you're coming from. I also, I think that, again, John Mara has seen enough, meaning that he does not anticipate being in this situation next year, being anywhere close to picking at this point. My argument against this, though, and this is somewhat devil's advocate, and somewhat this is me battling with the exact same thing in my brain that you are talking about. So don't take this as me taking the opposite side or just trying to be a dick. But here's why this is a little different for me, in that
Sure.
we are looking at half the argument. Whenever you're talking about the draft, part of the argument is your situation, and part of the argument is the draft situation. And the reason that there are two quarterbacks at the top is because there isn't a clear one. Neither of these guys has even won their conference. Neither of them. So, I mean,
neither did Peyton Manning, neither did Andrew Luck.
Peyton Manning played in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
And
Andrew Luck played in the Pac-10.
Yes, against very good Oregon teams.
Not back then.
Who won?
Back then was like USC. USC was the powerhouse back then. UCLA was decent.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he went to to Stanford. Slight edge in terms of academics, probably changing a little bit of that roster.
Yeah.
But again, Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning had enough on tape for us to still say that they were clear-cut number ones. Mm-hmm. Neither of these guys on tape scream clear-cut number ones, and on top of it, they don't have that sort of Baker Mayfield moxie where it's like, but he wins. You know what I mean? Like, because they don't. Neither of them. You know what I mean? So, and Cam Ward is, 2 years removed from being an incarnate Ward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are legitimate issues with these quarterbacks that are not just say like, well, I'm picking him because I'm first of the line is an understandable statement. But if the expense is, well, I could get a number one next year, and if I package up both my ones, I could get within striking distance of next year where there's, and again, I'm not doing the evaluation on next year, but these guys are, and this is their job. And I guarantee you that they are. If they feel like there's 3 guys that are better than these 2, it might be a better deal. That's all I'm saying. So I think it would be stupid to say trade back just for picks this year, because that to me is short-sighted, right? That's you saying I'm trying to fill every possible hole in the roster instead of filling the quarterback because I don't like the quarterback. That's just being right. That's playing armchair GM.
I absolutely was, in my scenarios in my brain was like, if I'm trading down, the haul is going to be for next year and going forward. It's not for now. Yeah.
And then just, as a one tiny caveat to what I think is a good point. If people are clamoring to get your pick to pick a quarterback, then he's probably pretty good. But again, probably. San Francisco gave up a lot to get Trey Lance. And
all of this is probable. And that's the thing. This is all a crapshoot. And what we're trying to do is just increase our odds and our probability. Nothing is guaranteed in this. So that's when people are like, let's wait, let's wait for Arch Manning, which I think is honestly the stupidest argument. Really stupid. I beyond stupid. I mean,
if his name was Arch Branning, no one would care.
No one would care. Yeah, I mean, even if he was a 5-star, I mean, because is anybody out there? Can you tell me that the 5-star quarterbacks in the class of 2023? Anybody?
2023 is Lagway one of them?
No, Arch is.
Oh,
he's
my year ahead.
Yeah, so my point is, it's like nobody knows. Arch has a name because of the pedigree, and then Giant fans are like, well, I guess the nephew of the quarterback who played here is good enough for me. Mm-hmm. But still, there's so many moving parts that have to happen for Arch Manning. Arch Manning has to win the starting job next year. Doesn't even start. He plays garbage time, and he plays when Ewers gets hurt. So he couldn't even beat out this quarterback now. So the guy who can't even beat out his quarterback now, no matter how good he is now, is someone that I'm going to, tank another year for and put myself in position for. I don't see it. And also, going back to the bridge thing, if you bring a bridge quarterback in, you're not bringing a bridge quarterback to tank again. If you bring in somebody like, and I'm going to use the name, I'm not happy I'm saying, but someone like a Jameis Winston, that team is not going to be 3-14 or whatever it's going to be to put yourself in position. He's probably going to be a little better than that. I mean, Jameis is who Jameis is. The whole experience, and everybody knows how much I can't stand him, but they're going to probably be like, there'll be improvement. And each win you have next year with that bridge quarterback makes it more and more difficult to get the quarterback you want. Again, this is all about who do you want? Who does Brian Dable want? Who does whatever his offensive coordinator wants? Who is what Joe Shane wants to fit together with his roster? That's what we're trying to do. We're not playing fantasy football. It's what is the best quarterback to fit this team. And I just, the odds of it by, trading back, I just think are decreased to get that guy than now. And again, I am prefacing all of this with, we have a whole offseason of evaluation for quarterbacks. I take us in the Grump as much as his word as anybody draft evaluator out there. And if he says to me, both of these guys, there's a lot of questions and I'm not into it. Well, I'm not going to die on the hill of like, you should draft a quarterback. But again, as we sit right now, that would be my preferred method.
Yeah, and I think that yeah, I think again your bridge quarterback scenario is you're not going to be close to losing next year, but it's the partnering of 2 first-round picks that you can get within striking distance. Like so, but it comes with some level of hope, right? Like you're not trading with the Raiders. You might be trading with the Jets. You're probably not trading with the Jaguars because the Jaguars aren't going to get a quarterback to leapfrog the Raiders. So I'm not really sure who is trying to leapfrog the Raiders to get the quarterback of their choice. But if it's somebody like the Jets or like, I don't know, Miami or something like that, then those are teams that are pretty stacked with talent that a quarterback, their first round pick next year might be fucking worse than ours in terms of like further down the order. So we probably won't even be moving up that much. You have to hope that the team that you trade with is going to lose so badly next year anyway that they're going to be within the top 5 so that when you package together your pick and their pick, you can move from 5 to 1 or something like that.
And there's also a Travis Hunter wild card too, where
sure.
He's a very, very, very
Vontae Mack or nobody at all or whatever it is.
Yeah, he's somebody that is, I could see a lot of franchises like I may want that guy too. So that it's not just assured that quarterbacks are 1-2 necessarily.
That's true. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm lying here. Maybe Jacksonville moves up to take Trey. I don't know. But whatever. I think you make a good point, and I think that is going to be the focus going forward. As soon as the year is over for Pittsburgh, I'm very interested in what Russell Wilson has to say to the media. I'm very interested to hear what Sam Darnold has to say to the media. I'm interested in the swarm around and Brock Purdy as well. There's a lot of people to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And if I think this organization is too far away to bring in, I think personally, one of those guys. Those guys aren't bridge quarterbacks. Those guys they're the next quarterback.
This is where you and I disagree. I think Russell Wilson is 2 years at best, because he's going to be 37 next year, and we have a pretty good track record of how many quarterbacks actually look good after 40, and it's 1.
All right, but he's a different kind of quarterback too. But my point is though, if you're talking about Sam Darnold or you're talking about even Brock Purdy,
sure, yeah,
and they're also going to have very high price tags too. So, again, are we going to shoot our load with, paying for with the benefit of drafting the quarterback, whether it's this year or punting to next year, is you're paying a rookie scale for a quarterback where you can build the rest of that roster around. I mean, there's a lot of things going around there that are just, it's not as black and white as, and I just want to get out on the record what I think, because I am in a lot of conversations during the week about, we should do this or we should do that, or these quarterbacks, they suck, because I've heard they suck. This is not a deep draft class. Deep means to me there's 5 or 6 guys out there. You just got to find your guy, and again, I want to be able to pick my guy. I want the pick of the litter. If they cross out, there's only 3 guys you're really considering as opposed to 7. That's fine. Get your guy.
I am. I think that this is going to be the dominating conversation. Probably in 2 weeks, our Tuesday morning episode will have a lot to say about some quarterbacks. So we'll see how it goes. But I think anyone who is dug in on their opinion in December is already being kind of foolish, because there's a lot that can happen with the draft still. these guys can bomb interviews. Cam Ward
Sure.
has said something dumb already before, Miami not being selected to the college football playoff, which we'll get to in a minute. He said that, he openly criticized the selection committee and said that he faced some of the hardest defenses in the league, which is just categorically false and silly. You know what I mean? And Shador comes with the Deion Sanders,
Baggage.
purse, who I just saw today said, and I didn't read the article, so, hand to God on that one. But the quote for the headline was, don't even think about drafting Travis Hunter if you're not going to play him both ways. Or what, bro? Or what?
You know, you're not even his dad. You're his coach. Go fuck yourself. I mean, oh God, I don't want anything to do with that cancer near this team. Again, you're gonna have to tell me that Shador Sanders, Grump, walks on water for me to co-sign drafting him. So,
so
we'll get to that bridge when we cross here with Shador Sanders being drafted number 1 by the Giants. But until then, I'm adamantly opposed to drafting him.
That's what I'm saying. So anyone who's dug in today before any of that stuff happens, that's a little silly to me.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about the college football playoff, because I thought this was a really good Friday and Saturday for watching football.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because, again, Grump and I have different perspectives and backgrounds when it comes to college football. You all know, I grew up in the SEC, went to an SEC school. I've lived it now for 35 years, and Grump's a Northeasterner where it's just not part of the culture. So, an expanded college football playoff is something I've been advocating for years. I know ESPN, all they care about is debate and hot takes and talking about sports more than actually broadcasting sports. And they love arguing about, well, who should have been 2 or 3, or who should have been 4 or 5, or now who should be 12 or 13. We are finally playing games. We are finally, you have a claim, you're getting a chance to win it on the field. And this is an important distinction with the college football playoff as opposed to the NFL. The NFL playoffs are 100% math. Wins, losses. Win a division, win more than anybody else, you get a bye. The college football playoff, with the exception of the 5 teams with the conference champs and the 4 buys for the 4 highest ranked conference champs, it is opinion. It is a bunch of humans on their perceptions making the prediction, who they think is better or not. So, we have these first, and this is also the first year we're doing this. So we get 4 teams that win, that were all the higher seed, were all the home teams. And they all win rather comfortably. I think all 4 covered, actually. And it's just amazing how in this hot take culture, everybody has decided that this is a disaster. This has failed. This is not entertaining. The wrong teams are obviously not put in. The system's flawed. And once again, those people either don't understand college football or just don't have any perspective into what's going on. First of all, the purpose of the college football playoff and its core essence is not to entertain you necessarily. It's not to have the most exciting matchups, not to have, last second Hail Mary passes win games or lose games. It is to determine a national championship on the field, not a mythical national championship like we used to have, a national champion. And I've always been under the belief that I'd rather have teams that may not be worthy getting a chance to prove it on the field than teams that have an extremely valuable case not getting in because some blue bloods on the committee, have a bias to a name in a uniform as opposed to another name in a different uniform. And the most important thing to us is this is year 1, 4 games. If you have formulated your opinion on 4 games, I don't know what to tell you. We need data points. We need evidence. If in the next 15 years, you know, the away teams on this first round are 3-56, well, maybe there's something to this that maybe needs a tweaking, or maybe it is the right way to go, and that's just the way it is. But I think everybody just enjoy the process. Those are despite the scores, those are interesting games and fun games. It was fun watching Tennessee play at Ohio State. Never happened before. I mean, are you gonna watch some crappy fucking bowl game? Are you gonna waste your time watching Florida in the Gasparilla Bowl, or would you rather see these four really important, meaningful bowl games that happened, de facto ones? So I don't know. I hear all this stuff and it's just so silly. Everybody just enjoy the playoff. It's
Yeah,
it's
I
it's,
don't
it's
understand.
great.
What is this child on Christmas Day with all the presents that he possibly could ask for being like, "Oh, the little lights aren't twinkling, Clark." I mean, come on, what are we doing here? You show me a number 7 playing a number 10. You telling me you don't want to watch that game even if 7 wins convincingly? Give me a break. I mean, let's
Well,
first of all, if you've come to the conclusion that this is a mistake based on the first iteration of it, the first couple of games of it, that's like saying that's like me going to the ocean and filling a sandcastle bucket with water. No fish in there. Does that mean that there's no fish in the ocean? No,
yeah.
of course not. It's an incredibly small sample size. We looked it up. The first ever NFL wild card was in 1970. The first wild card to win a Super Bowl was 1981. It took 11 years for a wild card to get to this to win a Super Bowl. It's going to take time. No one said that this was going to, change the world in terms of a year-to-year basis. It's exactly as you said. And the other thing too is that injuries play such a huge part in football that it's not inconceivable that a team that that a fifth ranked team that would not have made the prior college football playoff could win it all.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too with college football that I think a lot of people with an NFL background fail to understand sometimes. The rosters of all 32 NFL teams are kind of close. They're okay. You can you can look at it on the surface of like the Giants versus Kansas City and say they're light years apart. They are a lot closer together than the way college rosters are. There are traditionally always going to be, the scores of these games are going to be bigger. It's just look back in the college football playoff for the last 15 years. I mean, there are, Georgia blowing out TCU 63-7. My Florida Gators blowing out number 2 Florida State 52-20. You don't have a salary cap. You don't have, there are no more scholarship limits anymore in college. It is really, like the Premier League. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And you're going to have more lopsided scores, even if it is 3 versus 6. And also, if you're complaining about 5 versus 12, I guarantee you ESPN, if that's their Saturday night game, is hyping that in October, is hyping that game up 43,000 times that week. Coming up, 5 versus 12 on primetime ESPN. Let's have game day there. Let's talk about it for 7 hours. Let's have fuckface McAfee acting like an idiot on campus there. Let's do all these things. So it's not like the basketball tournament where Duke is playing, Long Island University in the first round or playing Winthrop. I mean, these are teams that they won their conference, or they went through their gauntlet of their conference. Now, all conferences are created equal. I get that, and it'll play out on the field. But I just think people are just looking for reasons to bitch and moan, and as like everything else is in this country, you establish your hill and you die on your hill immediately.
Well, I think you made the finest point of it all was saying these are meaningful games, whereas every other bowl game is not meaningful. All those bowl games, the underscore is that half the team are getting ready for the draft and are foregoing the bowl game, or whatever, and that makes for not exciting football. Even if Tulane ends up beating Florida, and the two of them have no business, even playing each other. You know what I mean? What I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
It's pointless. It means nothing, and nobody cares. Whereas in this game, you actually have people playing for a reason. They are going to play through injury. They're going to give it 110% on every single play. It's more exciting to watch. And I don't know. I thought it was a great weekend of college football. I even watched the South Dakota State North Dakota State game. Mark Gronowski and South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Hey, why not, man? It was good football. It was determined by one touchdown.
Hey, I fucking went down 1,000 miles to a completely meaningless bowl game, and I had a good time. So it also helped that we blew out Tulane. But yeah, you're right. I mean, bowl games had a purpose. Back when there wasn't that much.
Ago.
There wasn't that much TV, so and you played basically your conference, and then the teams get rewarded with a trip down south, and it's exposure. It helps the tourism of the cities that host them, and away we go. Well, those days are over because now we actually, crowning a true national champion took more and more precedence. The money obviously started pouring in from the networks, and we have a full tier playoff system. It's great they've incorporated the bowls. Like this New Year's weekend, we got the rose, the orange, the sugar. They're all part of the fiesta. They're all part of the playoff. That's great. You're keeping those traditions. You're keeping these sites and everything, but you're making them. You're giving them balls now. You're giving them reasons to say this means something. Okay, if you win the Rose Bowl, that's great. You win the Rose Bowl, but all right, well, if the other team's quarterback didn't play, then who cares? But now they mean something.
I thought it was a great weekend of college football. I was even in the blowout games, I was heavily invested. I didn't want to see comebacks from certain teams, so I thought it was great.
It's also the first round.
Yeah, I mean, it's about to get more intense.
How come nobody ever bitches about the first round of the NCAA tournament when Duke is playing Winthrop and they win by 86? Oh, love it! It's great. I love the big dance.
That's because they all have too much money on Duke winning it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, everybody has it in their brackets, but a lot of money was wagered this weekend too on these things. You'll see brackets for that as well starting to come up. Now, I will say one thing before we leave this topic. I would make one tweak to the playoff.
I'm interested in this, because we talked a little bit about this.
Yeah, I love the fact that conference champions have an automatic bid into the playoff. I love the fact that the 4 highest seeded playoff conference champions get a bye. What I would do is after the first round and after each round, I would reseed, because we already have some situations where there is a perception of this team has a quote unquote cakewalk and this other team has a quote unquote, bracket of death. And to me, I think the advantage of getting that bye is huge. And to me, that makes winning your conference still important, makes your regular season important. That way you can get that, because you will never lose a game you don't play. And okay, it's 1 versus 12 or something, but you're still talking about the 12th best team in the country. And go look at every team in the country who they lose to. They don't just lose to number 1 or 2 teams in the country. Upsets happen. But I would tweak it so, after each round you reseed and you have the best possible matchups going forward, and make each team as even as you can, being their challenge to get to the championship game.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that's the most fair. And to your point of upsets happen, didn't Georgia Tech beat Georgia at some point this year? I mean,
no, they lost in like 5 overtimes. But I mean, like, who did Notre Dame lost to some scrub?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Upsets happen every single week in college football. So. Yes, that upset could be 1 versus 12, because that's right. Even that's not a tremendous upset if it were to happen in the regular season. 1 versus 12.
Getting that bye is critical. It means you better treat your conference with the respect that conferences deserve anyway. But you better treat every game, because if you kind of fuck up along the way like a Clemson did, you may win your conference, but you've had so much collateral damage on the way that you don't even get the bye. You have to play that first round, and you don't want to play a first round game. You want to less. The easiest path to winning these things is playing less games.
Yeah, and this came about, I think, as I just kind of noticed that Indiana versus Notre Dame is such a cool matchup with like this weird subtext of them both being in the same state. And I'm not from Indiana. I'm not even from the Midwest, so I don't know. I don't know what the demographics are in state. But I imagine that Indiana University people are more the I don't. This is
Well,
me generalizing all over the place, but I can imagine there being like some sort of divide between being private school and being a state university person.
yeah,
Um,
the big rivalry in Indiana is Indiana and Purdue.
right.
Notre Dame is kind of like that weird university where it's not like a bunch of Indiana people go there.
No, not at all.
It's a national school. It's a national brand. You get a lot of you know Chicago, New York, huge influences on the
but
other
but but
thing
that's
there.
why I think that feeds into it, right? If you're from Indiana, that probably annoys you. That
Yeah,
Notre Dame is
sure.
not really part of it. You know what I mean? Like that sort of weird local annoyance rivalry kind of thing. And it's such a weird rivalry because it's not like it comes up. It's not a rivalry. It doesn't come up at all. But I'm
They
sure
don't.
that it meant
They don't.
something there.
Oh,
And
sure.
I was just kind of thinking about like, and this is me thinking the lowest of the low of the NCAA,
Uh,
and just I can just see them scheming how they're gonna decide the rankings of some menial teams that all had the same record, and just making sure that those headline games, those storyline games, end up happening. You know what I mean? It's like, well, Notre Dame probably should be 9, but you know what? If they're 10, then they play Indiana. Let's do that. Let's do that. Yeah, we'll make Notre Dame 10. And then that
yeah.
way we get the storyline game and we can get some money out of it or something like that. I see that kind of thing happening in the future.
I think if they do stuff like that, I think you lose credibility really quickly with this whole thing. I
Yeah,
think
but
it.
I mean, I think there are going to be situations where I think that it'll be justifiable if everyone has the same record and they have similar strengths of schedule. I mean, who
I,
can really argue with it at that point?
mm, because the way they do the rankings, it's not they're not putting together a bracket. It's like you're voting. Okay, everybody, we're voting for number one. Okay, that's number one. Now we're all voting for who's number one, who's number two. This one, three. They do it that way, and that's kind of then after that it kind of flows in. So it's really hard to predict. Like I don't know what the numbers were Indiana or Notre Dame, what their rankings were actual.
Indiana was 10, Notre Dame was 7.
Okay, so that is really something if you're going to be like, well, let's bump Indiana up 2 spots more than they probably think so just for this matchup. I don't. That'd be really that's some real voting Olympics to cut gymnastics to do that. I think it's not like how they did. It's not how they do the brackets for the NCAA where they're literally plotting things because in that geography does matter because they don't want so much travel and they want to make it it makes more sense for this team to play this team here, so the smaller school doesn't travel as far as stuff. This because you're only playing 3 games, it because you're voting on the seeding first. I don't think they do that.
I hope not. I just think very lowly of the NCAA and
Oh,
ESPN for that matter. So, um, but I'm excited for another week of college football. I'm excited for the Giants to close out the season. The ending to the season has been the slowest possible slow death that you could imagine. And in all that, I'm excited for the holidays, and I hope that all of you listeners have a wonderful, safe, healthy, and happy holiday, and a similar New Year.
yeah. I mean, we're so thankful for everybody who listens and all the friends we made doing the show. I was at the Nick game with Snacks, who never would have met wasn't for doing this show and everything. And now I consider him a good friend and all the friends we've met, either through this show or through the tailgate or through, the Talking Giants community and stuff. So it's been I'm really blessed for that. And it's really great. I mean, we're talking about a horrible, horrible football team with nothing good to say. And, we have people that we can kind of commiserate with and be like, well, we're all in this together. So, we're going to look back in 5 years. Hopefully it's not that long. And, as we're getting ready to talk about the bye and the playoff and thinking about, well, Super Bowl's in New Orleans this year. Where are we going to go for our 5-for-1, hurricanes and stuff? So there's good times ahead. We'll just have to get through it together, and we will.
And let's end on that happy note. Until next time, go
Go
Giants.
Giants.